Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 766 of Screw the Commute podcast. And yes, I know many of you have called me a psycho, but I decided to have a real psycho on. Lance Cayko is here, and I think that's not a stage name. He can tell us about that, but he is a award-winning architect, and he got knocked down and he got back up with some guerrilla marketing techniques he's going to tell you about. He's a podcast host, and we'll bring him on in a minute. Now, make sure you check out my TikTok thing at Digital Multimillionaire, and also pick up a copy of our automation ebook. You will thank me for it, because we actually figured it out one time. We estimated it's just one of the techniques in this book has saved me 8 million keystrokes, and that's saved me carpal tunnel, and I want you spending time with your customers and prospects and not fighting with your computer all day long. So get your free copy of that at screwthecommute.com/automate free. And let's see, we've got lots of back episodes, training episodes at screwthecommute.com/training. Probably 400 training episodes there that on all kinds of topics since, I've been doing this 29 and a half years since the commercial internet started. So I've been around a little bit, so check them out. All right, let's bring on the main event. Lance Cayko is a dynamic architect, builder, and podcaster, and he's the co-founder of F9 Productions. That's not FU Productions, it's F9 Productions. He specializes in residential and commercial projects. Now, he's got expertise in architecture and construction, and he's earned recognition and actively contributes to his community through lecturing, leading a nonprofit, and co-hosting the podcast Inside the Firm. Lance, are you ready to screw the commute?
Let's do it.
All right. Good to have you, man. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for leaning into Cayko. Maybe I should start telling people that's my stage name. I love that.
Well, I meet a lot of psychos, but never any real ones.
Yeah.
So glad to have you on here. And I forgot the other podcast you're doing is Monday Morning Coffee podcast too. So that's pretty ambitious. 2 separate podcasts that are doing real well. And I think I first heard about you a long time ago. I was thinking back now, but I didn't recognize the pronunciation was Cayko, about some tiny homes. And you're an architect, but tiny homes was a big trend a while back. Tell them about your experience with that.
Yeah, we jumped on the tiny home train right away. And I think right when it was starting to, even before there was such things as like Twitter hashtags and Twitter trending, but I'm trying to make that metaphor work in terms of it was still something that, at the very beginning of the stages of all, that whole movement taking off, it was a reaction like a lot of things are in the United States. For better or for worse, it seems like we overcorrect when we go too far one way and then we go too far the other way and that sort of thing. So it was a correction in a reaction from what happened after the Great Recession with the meltdown in the housing industry with all of the overlending and the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and everything like that. So, if it's not too long ago, I think everybody will remember that, millennials just keep getting pounded with this. As soon as we just get these big recessions that come in, it's like, man, are we ever going to own a home? So a lot of millennials at that point who were just getting out of school like myself and ready to start thinking about buying their first starter home, starter condo, starter thing like that, rug got pulled out from underneath us all in terms of the Great Recession. And like in the architecture community and construction industry, about 50% of the people got laid off. So it was even more tragic than the tech sector. And so what people started doing is they started looking at the opposite, is like, do we actually need to be buying, these even just a starter home all the way up to like a McMansion? And so it was a social thing, really. It was a reaction of like the opposite of like, what is the smallest we could get down to and try to not have a mortgage, so maybe we could avoid some of these pitfalls. So our specific story with the tiny house starts with when Alex and I first started the firm in 2010.
That's Al Gore, I might add. Besides
Yes,
the psycho,
exactly.
we got a psycho and Al Gore on the show today.
Yes, sir. Yep, exactly. So my business partner Al Gore and I were coming back from Boulder one day, and we were celebrating. It was a very kind of small celebration for what we could afford at that time. I think we went and got burgers or something like that at our favorite joint. Well, we got this duplex project that we were going to design, very very first like substantial project for us, and we called our friend Blake up. Blake was living up in South Dakota at the time, and we said, "Hey Blake, how's everything going? How are you doing?" And he's like, I hate my job. And I go, well, how much money do you got? We said, he's like, I hate my job. And I was like, well, you love photography. Like, why don't you just quit? Like, how much money do you got? Do you got enough money to just kind of travel for a while? And he's like, yeah, I've got like, $20,000 or $30,000 or something in the bank like that. He's a single guy, no responsibilities besides himself, sort of thing. And we were like, oh man, you ever heard of those tiny houses? They seem to be like starting to get popular. What if you designed one and built one, and then you just traveled all over the United States with it? That'd be cool. And we laughed about it, whatever. Alex and I are the type of people that often act on, not often, but on certain points, we think it's okay to act on impulse. And this is one of those points. So we got home after we hung up with Blake, and I bought the domain name Blake'sTinyHouse.com. And I set it up, and then I emailed him in the morning and copied Alex on the email. And I said, hey, I guess you're doing it. And Blake agreed and kind of went along with us for a while. And we worked with another colleague of ours, Sarah Schultz, for about 6 months. And finally, Blake, we sort of called Blake's bluff. He sort of called his own bluff. We ended up doing all of these really cool iterations of a tiny house. And since we're architects looking at like what the common man was doing with a tiny house part at that point, we like to try to like break the box, so to speak, metaphorically break the box. The biggest thing we noticed about the tiny houses way back then, which they were really sort of in their infant stage of people even talking about them, so it was a pretty new movement, was that they just kind of look like cabins on wheels. And we were like, man, I'm not sure that's doing justice for what they're really trying to do, in the sense of, they're pulling these things around often to the woods, next to creeks, like outdoors. Like, and on top of that, you're sort of confined to this space. What if we made ours so that it was a foldable, collapsible, transforming tiny house, so it was dynamic, right? And what would it come? And then at the same time with the nature part of it, it was like all they're doing is building like glorified RVs, is what we thought. Like, why can't we have just a ton of more glass involved with this? So you really feel that blend, that seamless sort of like, am I inside, am I outside sort of feeling. So when you go look at our house, the first tiny house that we designed to build on f9productions.com, and we're on a HGTV episode as well, season 1, episode 13 of Tiny House Big Living. Ours is a dynamic folding tiny house. It's got a folding deck and an awning that end up covering up and protecting this giant glass wall that we have. And then it's fully sustainable too. So it collects its own rainwater, which you can use for flushing the toilet. And then it's got solar panels on top, so it's sort of an all-in-one. And what was amazing about it is I think the most amazing part from a marketing standpoint was we got so much organic traffic on that website without barely knowing how to even build a website at that time, just using like a free service like Weebly. We were getting the growth of exponential. The growth was like exponential on how much traffic we can get to that website, to the point where then that's how like HGTV got a hold of us, CBS got a hold of us, NBC. Everybody was scrambling to beat the other networks out to try to put these shows out about people designing and building tiny houses. And there was just you even go look back at the historical Google searches at that time, like they started to skyrocket. So we really sort of luckily, through our intuition and then our impulse, jumped on that sort of bandwagon right away and got recognized for it. We ended up winning an International Architecture Award for that tiny house, which was kind of unfound at that point. It was a very first of its kind sort of thing. HGTV found us. We filmed with them the whole time. And this is when, again, at the very beginning of the firm, we had no advertising dollars. Like it just couldn't happen at that point. But we didn't get an appearance fee with HGTV or anything like that. And we just kind of put the time in, and they watched us design and build it. But that press was priceless for us, because then we were on TV every 2 weeks. And then we won the International Architecture Award for it. And it ended up landing us another set of tiny houses to build, but this time we were paid the whole time, and for a pretty handsome design and construction fee. Subaru ended up finding us, and they wanted to build 2 more of those. So we ended up, at first I was reluctant to do it, and because the first one was so hard. I mean, we're literally inventing a different kind of tiny house that nobody had ever seen, because it was so foldable and collapsible and all of those kind of neat things. And I told my business partner, he was enthusiastic about building the next 2. And I said, well, I don't know. And the first 2 were really hard to build. And he said, well, what if I tell him this number? And he did. And they didn't even bulk at it. So we ended up building those 2. We've built a couple since then. And that was kind of a big part of us cutting our teeth on figuring out how to do unique projects with the very little money, if no money, that we've had, and really try to make the marketing happen exponentially. And sort of organically, and just riding the wave of, internet and social media and those sorts of things.
Well, I'm glad you didn't charge them by the square foot. You wouldn't have made too much. Wow, what a great story. So, so one of the things, and it actually, that joke just means something to people. Don't always charge for the hours or the square foot or whatever. Charge for the result. And and like I said, you probably lost money because they didn't even blink an eye. You could probably doubled the fee and they would have done it. These big corporations have enormous amounts of money, enormous. They can't even imagine. And I'm glad they gave some to you. Now, you had some rough times, right? And then you used some guerrilla techniques to get out of them. And we're all about bootstrapping around here. So tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, our firm started in the Great Recession, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like we got laid off from 2 very high profile firms. Mine was like a regionally high profile one. Alex was working in New York before he got laid off at one of the most high profile firms in the city. And so then when he came out to Colorado in 2009/2010, for those first 3 or 4 years, it was basically, barely living paycheck to paycheck. We, there's no real growth or anything like that. We were totally bootstrapped.
Was this before or after the tiny house stuff?
This would have been before the tiny house.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. Well, before we actually built it, but it was during when we were designing it. So the press is still lining up here, for that sort of thing. So since we saw the organic growth that we got from that website, that first tiny house website, then the next, so we had successfully identified that trend, right? And it was through, sort of in an organic way by talking to Blake, but then also just seeing a headline here and there and just kind of having that sort of pulse on it as a designer and in the field and everything. The next big one was in 2012. So everybody, I hope, still remembers, like, we'd been hearing all about this since forever. Since I remember, my first memories of like anything like this was like the Mayans are saying in 2012 the world's going to end. It was all this doomsday stuff. And so Alex and I, Al Gore and I, were driving with our girlfriends the summer, that summer of 2012. And we were headed down to the Grand Canyon. And if anybody's been in the Southwest or, that kind of West, when there's a big thunderstorm and stuff, and you're driving through that barren landscape, it exudes apocalypse. I mean, you just can't get away from it, right? Like, it looks like what it would look like if there was a nuclear winter and that sort of thing, right? So we were just in this sort of ethereal zeitgeist-like mindset about the apocalypse. And our goal after we did the tiny house, even the design work, was like we made it sort of an unwritten rule that we would do one fun project that could potentially get us a ton of free press every single year. And so this year, then that 2020 and 2012, it just all seemed to click as like, why don't we do doomsday dwellings? if the word apocalypse is going to get Googled, a bunch this year, and the Google trends are going to go up, what if we did a series of homes, just theoretical design like ones, right? That doesn't cost us anything but our time. And we had a lot of time at that time. We had the hardware from, computers and the design skills and all that, but we had no money. And so that's all we could really bring to the table to try to get press or people to notice us and look what we're doing and pay attention to our work and maybe hire us and stuff like that. So we came up with 4 different houses, and the website still exists today. It's called doomsdaydwellings.com. We came up with one that would protect you against floods, another one that would protect you against a nuclear winter, another one that would protect you against wildfires, and another one that would do earthquakes. And what ended up being probably the best part about it was, they actually got picked up all over. A couple different international magazines picked them up. CNN picked it up. But the best one for us was a magazine called Modern in Denver. And I'm actually, as I'm sitting here, recording with you, Tom, I'm looking at the Modern, that magazine that we got into in 2012, and we ended up landing a 7-page spread.
Wow.
And I know, I'm glad you said like that is a wow, because, and if anybody doesn't know this, magazine like that is like sometimes it's up to like at that back in the day. I remember asking like, what would this have cost? And they said that would have been $7,500 a spread to get full of 7 pages basically. So $7,500 each page. There's no way we could have paid for that kind of marketing back in the day, but we had a compelling, interesting, unique story. And a lot of these editors that I found, whenever we get this kind of press, if you can just sort of spoon feed it to them and you're polished with what you present, it literally makes their job easy. And they're more than happy if you have a compelling enough story or design or idea to put it out there on your behalf, because you're actually making their job easier. So that's one of my favorite guerrilla marketing stories. And like I said, there's no way we could have afforded that kind of press. And then once we got in that magazine, it solidified us in terms of people who are noticed in the area. And we landed a couple really nice single family custom homes to design after.
Yeah, it's basically you structured a free publicity campaign and implemented it. And plus, those people that do the story, they're going to have you in their database, and when anything comes up architecture-wise, so you can get ongoing promotion out of it. Now, did anybody ever commission the actual homes?
No, I wish they would have. I was really
sell
close,
the plans
recently.
I just bought plans to build an Adirondack chair. The lady sold 3,000.
I'm still very confident that at some point in the future, I feel like I'm 40 years old today. Most architects honestly do their best practice and work in the last 10 years of their life. So I've got another 4 years, to hang on for that. It's going to happen. It's going to get built.
No, you got to accelerate it. You just get with AOC, and the world's coming to an end tomorrow, and you got to hurry up and buy the house and paint it green.
We'll have Greta Greta Thunberg get arrested again on our behalf.
That would be perfect.
If we don't build
that
these.
Would be perfect. Now, so you did something with Amazon too, as a guerrilla marketing technique. What was that?
Yeah. So the next evolution of what we did after that was, and this is again, our strategy has been trying to find things that are going to trend or are sort of just right at the beginning of trending. So if everybody recalls, back in 2017, Amazon was looking to develop their second headquarters somewhere. And they were identifying a city, and there was all these cities some cities were completely fawning over them, giant tax breaks and all this other stuff. And so my business partner had the idea of what if we did a study and we just did a test fit. What would Amazon HQ look like if they put it in Denver? And we built the tallest skyscraper in North America right in Denver, and it was Amazon's headquarters. So he scrambled to design this skyscraper. And again, if you go to our website, you just type in, and you look down at the ideas section of our website and our portfolio, we still have the Amazon HQ concept up there. And so he executed. We split the task of getting this out to the media in half. In other words, Al's job was he was going to dedicate 2 days in the firm to design everything and get the concepts out and get the renderings done. And then it was my job as somebody who was deep into social media at that point, with some political activism and stuff like that. Like, I knew how to make things go viral, and I knew how to get attention. And I also had I think the advertising ability, right, where you could boost the posts and stuff like that. Back when they let you do that really well. And so we conquered and divided the problem in that way. He did all the renderings, did all the Photoshop stuff, and then I went after that and then marketed it online. And we ended up getting in a couple local newspapers because of it, but then actually interviewed by Fox 31 and Denver 7. They came up to our office with the media van and everything like that and interviewed us and then showed the skyscraper on there. And we got all this amazing press. And then at that point, we were also even using like this email tracking software, and we could see if people, who opened our email, we sent the package to Jeff Bezos and his team, and we were able to actually see like that they shared it around corporate for about a week. We never got a call from Jeff or anything like that, but we couldn't have paid for that kind of press even in 2017, which should have been 6 years ago,
right,
that sort of thing. And what it resulted in is from one of the newspaper write-ups, we landed on the front page because, it was kind of like mind-blowing to people. I mean, they really thought we were so good at sort of tricking in a way the public that they actually thought this was going to happen, And so when we made the cover of one of the newspapers in town, they a local developer, real estate developer, ended up giving us a call, and we ended up designing their townhome project. I think it ended up being like a 14 unit townhome project. And 6 years ago for us, that was a pretty big deal. So it ended up working in our favor in terms of the return came later.
Yeah, it's beautiful guerrilla techniques, that's for sure. And it kind of reminds me, you're not old enough, but the War of the Worlds was on the radio, and people were panicking because they thought it was real. So probably people were moving to Denver to work for Amazon.
Yep. Well, they were actually really angry because like I'm old enough to have listened to enough podcasts where they reference that story though. So I'm with you there.
So we got to take a brief sponsor break. When we come back, we're going to take a deep dive into the fishing world because this guy is into it. Folks, about 25 years ago or so, I kind of turned the internet marketing guru world on its head, and that guys at my level and girls were charging $100,000 up front for small business people to teach them what they knew. And I knew a lot of these people. They'd be hiding out somewhere in Mexico if you gave them $100,000 up front. You'd never see them again. So I said, that's too risky. I'm a big small business advocate, and I said, I'm going to charge just an entry fee, and then I'm going to tie my success to your success. So for me to get my 50 or 100,000, you have to net 200,000. And people really loved this. And 1,800 students later, it's the longest running, most successful, most unique internet and digital marketing mentor program ever. And I triple dog dare anybody to put theirs up against mine, and they won't do it because they're too embarrassed. But you get a immersion weekend in the Great Internet Marketing Retreat Center here in Virginia Beach. It's all one-on-one. We don't do any group coaching because we want success from you on what you're doing and speed. Without sacrificing quality. So my staff and myself will all work with you one-on-one, remotely, and here at the retreat center. And just nobody on earth will do this for you because they want all their money up front and they don't care if you're successful or not. So I changed that and kind of changed the world of internet and digital marketing. So, and we also get we have the only licensed dedicated internet marketing school in the country. And so if you're in my mentor program, you have a scholarship to the school, which you can either gift to a person or use yourself for extra credit. So it's the only one in the country, probably the world. So very unique, no high pressure around here. Love to talk to you about it. So check out greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. Or if you wanted to look at the school, look at the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia, imtcva.org. And if you're military, first responder, nurses, you get the 50% scholarship because we love you. Okay, let's get back to the main event. We're here with Mr. Cayko, Lance Cayko, award-winning architect, and he's doing some great things. What I really love about people like this is that they just don't keep sucking all the money for themselves and do nothing for the world. So besides fishing, which I want him to talk to you about, I want him to tell us about some of the ways his firm is giving back. So Lance, tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, number one, I think I was doing a different interview earlier today, and I think this kind of still rings true here is that I live a life with the mindset of abundance, right? So a
Mhm.
lot of other architects, design professionals, engineers, even contractors they keep things very close
Yeah.
to their chest, right?
Guard,
Because
guard
I
it
think
with a
they're worried
machine
about.
gun nest, everything.
Yeah, I think they worry about, and I have empathy. I totally understand why they would worry about it. They worry if they teach them rather, if they teach their employees too much about how much the business operates, that they'll just go up and start their own business. And I'm not of that mindset. Sure, that might happen, but I don't believe. I actually think entrepreneurs are so special in terms of the people that are willing to just go out there and take that kind of risk. It's not as abundant as I think most people think. I think entrepreneurs are in the minority. I would say more than anything. So that's the primary way that what Al Gore and I give back is that we we are pretty much minus nobody knows how much everybody makes at our companies. That's probably the only thing we hold back. But the employees know how the contracts work, how they're set up, what we're looking at for fees, and then the inner workings. We've even made an internal sales meeting, an internal sales course for our one of our senior employees who's now going to manage a Denver office that we just opened this last month. Our original headquarters up here in Longmont, Colorado. So the one of the biggest ways we give back is just internally, and then there's other ways we do externally, right? So Alex and I have developed a couple courses for other architects who are looking to be more efficient like us and get to that 30% profit, which is not typical, by the way. Most architects and designers are looking, and even contractors are looking somewhere between the margin of 10 and 20% profit. We do about 30% every year, and we do that through a course that we developed. It's RevitRocketShip.com. It teaches anybody. Tom, you could take the course if you really wanted to, and we could teach you Revit, our design software, in 3 days and make that happen. Then there's the podcast, Inside the Firm podcast that we have. We have a couple sponsors, so we are compensating for our time in that way. But for the most part, it's a labor of love. Once we got to year 7 in 2017, after being there, starting it in 2010, we kind of had a little epiphany, and it was, most businesses fail within the first 7 years. Here we are in our 7th year. Seems like we're kind of out of the clear. And with the kind of growth that we're looking like we're going to keep going with, and this press and stuff that we keep making, it would be a positive thing if we told our journey about how we did that. Kind of brass and bare and raw and really not holding back. So that's when we started the podcast, and the pilot episode. And one that's been going the most is the Friday show. It's literally called Inside the Firm. And we tell our story on a lot of these marketing stories that I've told you in your audience today, Tom, are on that podcast. And there's a ton of other information there too. That is 100% applicable, not just to architects, not just to designers, any kind of small business owner. We just really give you everybody an inside look in that way for that. And then one of the last big things is we sponsor a community garden. Some of our employees end up taking over the plot, and they do a bunch of design work there. They grow their own food. And then at the end of the day, I'm also a philanthropist. So I run Longmont Community Gardens, and it's a community garden where we have about 40 plots, various sizes, that we rent out each year. We sort of have this public-private symbiotic relationship with the city where they give us the water for free, which is insane. I still think it's like this crazy blessing. And then we lease the land from them and pay for it with the plot rentals and everything like that.
Beautiful, beautiful. But where's the fishing going on?
The fishing is whenever I can get away, 100%. Yeah. From 2017 to early 2020, right before the pandemic hit, that's when we decided to put on a couple more hats. So up until 2017, we were strictly architects. And then after we built that second round of tiny houses with Subaru, we had enough profit from that. Al and I bought a third of an acre up here in Longmont, Colorado. And we'd always had the dream of wearing all 3 hats, meaning architect, builder, real estate developer. More risk, more reward. We get paid 3 times instead of 1. We have more control. We're going to be able to expand after that in terms of just what we can offer to the public, like a general contracting service, or maybe we even do more real estate development.
Wait a minute, that sounds like a pretty big development. A third acre, you could put 42 tiny houses on it, right?
You could put 42 tiny houses on it. 100%. Yeah. We ended up putting 9 condos on it, tiny-ish, super modern looking though, and super cool for sure. A lot of those tiny house lessons we pulled over into this project. But the reason why I'm telling you about you in the audience about this is like, that was one of the hardest 3 years of my life, from every standpoint. We spent the first year in 2017 just getting through the city and all of their bureaucratic nonsense. Then we spent the next year in 2018 trying to get the whole thing financed. Then I spent 2019 in the mud and the dirt, and at one point working 80 days in a row to get this first one built, done, sold, and out alive. I mean, when you do a development like that for the first time, if you don't come from money like I do, you are just scrapping every single inch, every single way, just trying to get that first one done. And just like everybody says who is successful, it seems, you get the first one done, the next one's easier, et cetera, right? Well, we finished it. We got it done. COVID hit. Everything was locked down. It was kind of a perfect storm for me. And what ended up happening is I experienced burnout, kind of like I never had before. I mean, as somebody who's just really a go-getter, even from the age of like 13 up until 40 now, all those years of just like working, every waking minute sort of thinking, trying super hard, all of these sorts of things. And I found myself just like going, wow, I just don't feel like working right now. Like I'm really experiencing some burnout here. And at the same time, like none of my kids want to hang out. I have 4 children. They were like all hitting their tween and teen years. And it's like anybody who have kids and listening, like, what happens. They get their own lives because obviously they're becoming young adults. They don't want to hang out anymore. They don't want you to take them anywhere. They want to go sit in their room and listen to music with their friends or whatever. And so I found myself sitting here going, wow, everything's locked down. I'm kind of in a burnout stage. I forgot why I even moved to Colorado in 2008. And it wasn't just for the architecture job. It was, I want to live in the mountains so I can hunt and fish trout as much as possible. And so once I remembered that and I got back into it, I just became completely addicted again. And it was every Wednesday I started, I would take off the whole day and go hiking and fishing all by myself. Saturday, same thing, hiking and fishing all by myself. Sunday, the same thing, hiking and fishing by myself. I started going on these big, long trips, rekindling my relationship with my brother. And I was doing it so much that I ended up becoming the regional editor for the fishexplorer.com, and which put me in charge of like monitoring all the lakes, rivers, creeks in Rocky Mountain National Park, Indian Peaks Wilderness, James Peak Wilderness. And then I became a fish angler ambassador, and then launched a YouTube channel called Fishing with Lance and a news break channel called Fishing with Lance, where I earn revenue. And it kind of was a full circle thing for me because like my mom, tells the story all the time. Yeah, when Lance was in 2nd grade, all he wanted to ever be was a professional fisherman.
Really?
And so the first cent I made, I actually framed for her with a photo of myself on my channel and gave it to her for Mother's Day in 2021.
Wow. That's a cool story, man. Oh, well, this is what we love about entrepreneurship. You could go do things. There's nobody stopping you. You can make your own breaks, and just love it. So thanks so much for coming on, Lance. Tell people how they get a hold of you.
Yeah, best way to get a hold of me is link in with me. Go to linkedin.com, type in Lance, Lance, last name Cayko, Cayko. It's really pronounced like that. I will never be offended if you pronounce my name like that. If you're looking for good business content, again, go to InsideTheFirmPodcast.com. You can find us on YouTube, iTunes, all those other places. If you're looking to keep up with anything architecture-wise, go to F9Productions.com.
Right, what was the last
newsletter,
one?
And we'll keep you updated.
F9 Productions, right?
Yes, sir.
F9Productions.com. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tom.
Okie dokie, folks. We will catch you all in the next episode. See you later.